And go.
Hey there, tape heads. Welcome to a very special episode of Make Us a Mixtape. I'm your host, Marty DeRosa.
I'm your other host, Paul Farahvar.
And we have went out and got ourselves a true music insider. Paul and I like to joke that we're music insiders. Yes. We may or may not be. That's up for debate. What's not up for debate is our guest doing a very solid favor to us by being on the show. Is a absolute music insider.
100%.
You might know him from MTV, FUSC, GQ, Billboard, a whole bunch of things. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the podcast, John Norris.
What's up, guys? How are you?
Very dramatic. Very nice.
Greetings from Brooklyn.
So, John, first of all, thank you so much for doing this podcast. And you were gracious enough to send us your mix, and we'll get into that in just a little bit. But before we do that, we just want to talk to you a little bit about sort of being a music insider and making this your life. What was sort of the path to getting where you are today?
It's funny, I was a journalism major at NYU, and I knew I wanted to do journalism. Which, by the way, now, if I'm not mistaken, at NYU now, a couple of decades later, you can't only major in journalism, which says something about the profession, right? Mm-hmm. You've got to have a second major, from what I understand. But back then you could, and I did. And but as far as music, I worked at the radio station a bit, and I just landed an internship at MTV. And that was back in the days when it was quite conceivable that an internship could turn into a job. Nowadays, it's gotten so big, not only there, but other media places, that's not necessarily a given by any means. And but it turned into a job as a writer. And I wasn't on camera at first at all. And they had brought in Kurt Loder, like I think in I was going to say 88, 89 or something like that. They brought in Kurt. And so I was just one of his writers at first. And then they needed an alternate, because when they would send Kurt away, because they no longer had the VJs doing the news, they needed an alternate. And I was just sort of seriously, right place, right time. I mean, I had done acting as a kid. Like me and my brother's a big playwright, actually. But we started out as kid actors, and so I'd done some on-camera stuff. And so I was just comfortable on camera, I guess. And they were like, okay, you're good enough.
Yeah, I read that I Want My MTV, that oral history. And it seemed like, especially in the early days, it seemed like a lot of people got jobs of just being there, or we knew that guy, he'd hang out at the club a lot, so we thought he could talk about music, or Headbangers Ball and stuff like that. A lot of it seemed, I think that was such a cool part of the channel at the time, where it seemed so loose and just all right, you could do this, you're fresh out of school.
Very, very organic and stuff. And I mean, Martha Quinn was kind of a little legend in my life, because she lived in and worked in the dorm that I, a few years later, was living in at NYU, which also, weirdly enough, it's called Weinstein. And that's where a gentleman by the name of Rick Rubin started the early formations of Def Jam. And the Beastie Boys used to, not when I was there, but the Beasties would come in and hang out in the lobby and stuff. And so, our dorm has a lot of history to it.
How was that when you would first be on MTV? Were you just noticing people, you'd walk down the street and people would be like, oh my God, you're the guy from, would you get on the subway and stuff, the stairs?
Well, I mean, it was gradual, because I was just Kurt's sort of fill-in, in the beginning. And it wasn't until probably, early 90s when I was on regularly. And then I was kind of between 90, I think 3 and 5, I was sort of splitting news duties and VJing duties, because it's a long story. But so then, yes, then people started recognizing, and then it was and they still do it, but now it's definitely older people, because I've been away from there for more than 10 years. So, but sometimes it'll surprise me, a 20-year-old will know who I am. Because I did on-camera stuff after MTV. A friend and I started a little startup website with a ton of video. We had a video interview series, and we did a ton of it, maybe 100 episodes of that. So real music heads, and that was more indie rock oriented. and so I'll get sometimes I get recognized from that even today, but yeah. So, when I'm out, like, not that I'm out this year anywhere, but I still get, not a lot, but fair amount.
Before we move on from MTV, can you just share like what's one of your favorite moments from being on the air or just at MTV that resonates with you still today in terms of or one of them?
I mean, it's like, man, I don't know. It's so okay. So I'll tell you one in terms of live events. I give this answer a lot to people because it just stuck in my head because it was really the first big trip they ever let me go on. It was definitely the first international trip I ever went on, which was to go cover the Freddie Mercury tribute concert at Wembley in 1993. And I still watch sometimes. I'll go back and watch clips from that now, and I look at like the shots of like Wembley, and I was like, I can't believe I was there watching Annie Lennox and David Bowie doing Under Pressure, and like, I mean, just and sometimes it's weird to me to think that I was actually at those things, and then as far as other things, man, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to get dark because my playlist is dark enough. But I was in for like a lot of death and a lot of dark times too. I mean, Kurt took the lead on the Kurt Cobain death, but I was sort of like the second anchor for that. And, Biggie and Tupac and Aaliyah. And I mean, and the weird thing is I left at the very end of 2008, and 6 months later, Michael Jackson died. And so they called me back and said, would you mind, I know we let you go, but would you mind coming back for like a week and like doing stuff about Michael? And I was like, sure.
Like what you did in the past. You were good at that stuff.
Yeah, because I never really did a proper sit down with Michael, but I had done like 3 different shoots with him. And I went to Neverland Ranch. Actually, that, you asked me what's a highlight. I mean, just, there's not that many people who can say they were at Neverland. Oprah was there and people like that. But yeah, that was a trip.
How do you learn about music now? Like, what are the ways that you learn about new music now?
Well, I mean, because I'm a freelance writer and really I'm, if you look at my Twitter profile, the first word on it, and not to be all like, the first word on it is retrophobe. And I tell people that because I kind of want to head them off of the past sometimes, because I feel like a lot of people, what they want to do is talk to me about whatever happened 25 years ago that was my favorite thing,
Mm-hmm.
And I am as engaged, if not more so engaged in new music today than I was when I left MTV. So to answer your question, I mean, in the way that any freelance writer does, like my inbox is got 75 emails a day with either new tracks, new videos, or new complete albums or EPs. And it's all I can do to keep up with it, to be honest. And then of course, Spotify, and I got my, my favorite playlists on Spotify and stuff. And Rap Caviar is a favorite of mine. Cause I've also like, I'm a very genre agnostic, I think is the term, person. I really like, in the last couple of years, I've been doing more hip hop writing, but I guess indie rock was, I mean, of these post MTV years, indie rock is really what I've been most immersed in, because the website I mentioned earlier that we started was very much focused on the indie rock of the late 2000s. It was all, I did Animal Collective and Deer Hunter and Arcade Fire and all the not only the big bands of that era, but smaller artists as well.
Do you ever think there could be like a rock band that could like sort of put rock back as the number one sort of music?
It's interesting. It's an interesting question because, in the early 2000s, we had things like, I don't know if you remember this famous cover of Rolling Stone, and I forgot what year it was, but it had Craig, the young singer from the Vine, sort of screaming, the Australian band the Vine screaming, and it said "Rock is back."
Yeah.
You know, and I can't tell you how many times, at least up until through the 2000s, I remember seeing various takes on that idea that rock is back. I think part of the problem now is that culturally, we're in a place where what was so much a part of rock traditionally, it's hard to make, big, broad statements about this, but hedonism, uber masculinity,
Mhm.
that I think a lot of those things are a tough fit in mainstream pop culture now. And I mean, I don't have to explain why that is. I mean, and in many respects, I think that's a good thing. But that doesn't mean that there aren't amazing rock bands that are plenty, feminist and, to use an overplayed word, woke. The thing about indie rock is it's never, I don't think it really aspires to have huge breakthroughs to the mainstream. I mean, you can count on a couple hands, the Vampire Weekends of the world, who've actually gone to that arena level, Arcade Fire is another one. They have, certainly. LCD Sound System. Sure, there are bands that have done that, but many, many more from whose heyday was in, say, 08, 09, who either maybe have gone on to other things and broken up, or I don't know. It's interesting. The two last bands we've got on my list today, one is still around, and the other one went away for a long time and recently sort of tried to make a comeback, and it was a grudging comeback, I think. We'll talk about them later, but
Yeah, for sure.
like, two interesting examples of the way you can handle a rock career. In some cases, the leader of the band is like, you know what? This had its moment, and it was what it was, but I need personally to go do something else, and the band can't really exist without him. And and then in other cases, they slog on and on and on. And we'll talk about this particular band whose lineup has ebbed and flowed, but one guy has remained.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about that.
Anyway, I don't know if I answered your question about.
Sure. And then before we jump into your mix, what's sort of your relationship with making mixtapes, whether they be on cassette or CD? Like back in the day, what was sort of your approach to a mixtape?
I was just like, it's gonna sound corny, but I would do it. I would make them real, like, personal, and I went through a period, I don't know when, probably like mid 90s, where I was really into like making them for individuals, and they would be like, I give it to them because it was my impression. It was like my reflection of how I saw them. And it was just as a gift, and more than like me trying to tell them something about how I felt or anything like that. But it was more of I would sometimes give them as gifts, like just.
Paul made a mix for an ex after they broke up, which I think is very strange.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's been very controversial on the podcast.
Was it an angry one?
No, it was more like the story goes that I was hoping she'd listen to it with her new boyfriend or husband, and the guy would be like, "This is a really good mix. Who made this?" And then she'd just be like, look off to the distance and be like, "Just someone I used to know."
Well, you had the whole scenario, like, it played out.
Oh yeah, 100%. Did you when you were
you weren't exactly over her, I take it.
I just want to be remembered, don't we all? What did when you would make the mixtapes for these people, were you introducing them to new music?
Okay, in some cases,
you were like the tastemaker in a way, right?
I guess, yeah. Especially because sometimes I'd include music that they weren't necessarily aware of or would not necessarily gravitate to themselves, like, I mean, I've always been a real weird mutt in terms of, especially because my job required me to cover a lot of things that maybe I wouldn't necessarily go home and listen to, on my own. and this is nothing. Okay, what the example I'm about to give you is nothing against the band I'm about to mention, but like I did a lot of boy band stuff in the late 90s and early 2000s because, well, Kurt was never going to do that.
Yeah.
And I actually I didn't mind it at all. And especially in the case of Backstreet Boys, I didn't mind it because I got to know those guys and they were really good guys. And I also think that I can 100% stand by the statement that I Want It That Way is one of the great boy band songs of all time. And when TRL finished, we did a big like 2-hour finale of TRL, and they did the TRL top 10 songs of all time countdown. And the one segment they allowed me to do, because Carson was there, all the hosts were there. But the one segment they could let me do was to be with Backstreet and introing I Want It That Way, which was like number 3 or 4 on the all-time countdown. But I guess, I'm sorry, I'm really rambling, but the point I was going to make, back in the day, I would be interviewing Backstreet Boys or NSYNC or whatever, and then I would go home and listen to like Neutral Milk Hotel, and like.
What if you had given them a copy of Neutral Milk Hotel and it would have been like this, like Beatles becoming a Dylan, you might have changed history.
Yeah.
It's possible.
Yeah.
I don't think they were really making necessarily a lot of artistic choices themselves, but I don't know. I mean, actually, a couple of the guys in Backstreet probably would have dug it. And for all I know, maybe not. I was gonna say they knew.
This would be a very interesting game if we knew all of the Backstreet Boy members and we could say if they know who Neutral Milk Hotel is.
I had to bet money. I put it on AJ as the one most likely to know.
He dated somebody who was into them or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
You were exposing people to the music. Would you then, am I correct in understanding that you would put those songs on the mixtapes to be like, okay, well, this reminds me of you. And even though I don't listen to.
Yeah, usually if they reminded me of the person, it had something to do with the lyric, and so I was, but that's the added bonus if you're introducing them to something they might not otherwise know,
Right.
I don't know. I don't know. Genres come and go, at least for me, genres come and go. I've never said I'm only an indie rock fan, or I'm only a pop fan, or I'm only a hip hop fan. But there's a sensibility that is consistent for me from since I was 12, probably, 13, that I think there's a through line sensibility in these 5 songs. I think that I didn't just choose them with the theme that I wrote you guys, I was calling it, but also because it's kind of part of me and my personality.
Yeah. So let's jump into it. Song number 1, Omar Apollo, from Hobart, Indiana, right where I grew up in Cherville, Indiana. Unbelievable.
So Hobart?
Yeah.
Indiana?
Oh yeah. I've performed at the big theater in Hobart before.
Oh, yeah.
Homecoming. Yeah, it was great. So, how did you hear about Omar Apollo?
I discovered Omar a couple of years ago. He's been around making music for releasing music independently for like 4 years, and he is a first generation Mexican American kid, not kid, he's 23, but sort of picked up a guitar at age 11, youngest in a family of 5, hardworking Mexican American immigrant Chicano family in Hobart. And safe to say his parents weren't necessarily thrilled with the idea of him becoming a musician.
Yeah.
I think he's got a doctor in his family, and like I said, he's the youngest of.
Don't we all?
Yeah, right.
So,
But anyway, he was making like more kind of rock oriented stuff as a teen, but then he kind of discovered his love of funk and soul, and man, even his early stuff is great, but it's just he's got such a natural, just such a flair for it, and he's just got this great soulful vibe. Plus, he's an incredible entertainer and dancer. He's got like Justin Timberlake. I mean, I hate to invoke Michael Jackson's name because that's like, that's like almost yeah, sacrilege, but
Well, if anyone could do that, it would be you, because
You've been in
actually-
Neverland.
You've been there, so.
So
Yeah,
let's play a little bit of Kamikaze, and then we'll talk a little bit more about Omar here.
sure.
Just a little listener.
Yeah, you don't feel good, does it? I'll show it. You don't ever say my bad. You're nothing. You told me that I wasn't worth it.
Yeah, very. It's definitely got like a world sound to it. Like you could tell the dude's been out of Hobart, Indiana, or the influences are
Yes.
outside of Hobart, Indiana.
He has. He's now lived in LA for like 2 years, and he's gone through about, in the last year, I want to say like 4 hair colors, teal and pink, and something that he didn't really feel comfortable doing in Hobart.
Yeah.
But any case, but he's got, his icons are now, I mean, Prince and Bootsy Collins. And interestingly enough, he celebrated the release of his most recent project called Apollonio, which is his middle name, just 2 weeks or a week and a half ago, with a live streamed show from Paisley Park. So, and you guys should check it out. It was amazing. And they had a socially distanced audience there and everything, but he went through the whole new record. Plus he did a lot of his stuff, and he covered Prince's I Want to Be Your Lover, which is one of my favorites. And he was great. He was great. And it was his first live show, obviously for obvious reasons, since I think March.
How do you feel watching Zoom shows? Like I know they did the Save Our Stages things a couple weeks ago. How do you feel watching some of those performances?
I guess now I'm kind of used to it, but in his case, it was really, it's multi-camera. I mean, this was impressive. I didn't realize, first of all, that Paisley Park had that kind of a performance hall in it, like a live showroom in it. But this was really impressive. I mean, everything from the lights to the band to everything. So yeah, I mean, it was amazing. I don't know. I guess none of us really know when he's or anyone's going to get to tour yet.
Yeah.
But the thing I wanted to say about Kamikaze is Omar is as amazing as he is with music, and just has this natural flair for kind of funk and soul. He's not been real personal with lyrics until it's been a gradual thing, him sort of opening up in lyrics. And the reason I chose Kamikaze is just because it's got these really like beautiful personal like moments in it lyrically about a trip that he took and driving 19 hours to Georgia and rain-soaked December, and there was, I think, a hookup with someone on the DL that he doesn't really want to talk about, but he's one of those like, I just want the song to speak for itself kind of people, which is like fine. I'm not going to like press him for the dirt, but he's great, and I expect. So far, he's resisted signing with a major label too. So we'll see where things go, but I expect things are gonna keep going on really well.
This video on YouTube had already had so many watches.
Yeah.
So does he even need to sign with the label at this point?
Good question. It's a good question. I think that these days it depends on the kind of music you make. I think whether going with a major even makes sense. Someone else I interviewed recently is 24K Golden, who's like a young hip hop pop star who's just blown up with like 3 like mega hits in the last 18 months, including this one called Mood that has been like one of the biggest hits of the summer this year. And he went immediately with Sony, with Columbia, like as soon as they like offered him the deal. And I think that's worked out well for him because he makes the kind of music that fits very comfortably on an iHeart radio station or whatever. Omar's being just a little bit subtler. Still, it's not like I couldn't hear it on pop radio, a lot of what he does, but because it's like a little less, big and brash than a lot of pop, I think it makes sense for him to stay independent for now.
Yeah.
And our next guy is definitely even more independent than Omar because he's earlier in his career.
Yeah, we'll get into that. We'll start playing some Curtis Waters, Freckles.
feeling alone and need company. You call on me, lay on your lap, I sleep so comfortably. Skip past it and just talk all night, yeah, you're the one for me. Skip past it and just talk all night. That goes on your face, your sun cheeks, they shining.
Yeah, this is like another song where I mean, like you could hear this on the radio for sure. Like there's so many songs where it's just a flip of a coin or whatever, and it's always been that way. And like Paul said, there's sometimes I'll see a new artist and start discovering them and watching videos, and it'll say like 5.4 million views, and it's like there's so many people out there who you just don't know about that are doing just fine on their own.
Well, in Curtis's case, I'll try to make a long story short, but he's a Nepali kid who moved to Canada when he was young. Now lives in North Carolina. Completely like bedroom artist, hip hop pop artist. But he absolutely blew up in the spring, not with Freckles, the one we just played, but with a song called Stunnin'. That was this viral monster because he did a very clever TikTok marketing campaign before the song even came out. And Stunnin', if you check out Stunnin', it's in the hundreds of millions of streams, and I don't know what its views are on YouTube, but it's certainly well into the millions of views. So Stunnin' really kicked the door open for Curtis. He had, again, big labels waving big checks at him, and he's like, no, I just want to do a distribution deal, which he did with BMG, but it allowed him to put out a succession of singles during the summer. And each one he really is like a very eclectic kid, interested in like emo rock and emo pop, but equally interested in like folk and singer-songwriting kind of stuff. But his background is really hip hop. So he's, I think that, and again, I hate to make statements that are too broad, but one of the really like hardening things that I find among like Gen Z artists and stuff is that the whole idea of genre is kind of almost like a thing of the past.
Yeah, for sure. I think that started too with like Napster, when you could just grab all these random songs and then it just kind of kept going from there. And it's like, it's not like they have a favorite radio station. Like you said, it's just Spotify or YouTube or however they're getting their music. And it's just these giant mixes of all different styles.
Yeah. The one other thing I want to add about Curtis is that he's also, and this is again, I think, a mark of younger people, another sort of stigma that's fallen by the wayside is younger people are more, I think generally, at least my experience is, comfortable talking about, mental health issues and anxiety. And Curtis has been in and out. I mean, he, as a 16, he was hospitalized for mental health issues and had to drop out of school. Then he went to UNC Greensboro, was diagnosed bipolar and was put on this regimen of like 6 pills a day. There's a song on his album called 6 Pills. And it sounds all dark, but the thing is, you listen to this record, the name of the album, by the way, is Pity Party. It just came out last month, because he kind of turns angst on its head. And it's, and the vast majority of the record is upbeat and hope, and it's got hopeful music to it. When you drill down into the lyrics, some dark shit on there. Like the latest single is called Shoelaces. And when he says, tying my shoe and tying a noose is one of the lines in it. So he's had, there've been dark chapters for him. But this particular song, Freckles, he was inspired by a girl that he met while he was actually in rehab for his depression and stuff. And she, there's a line in the song, "Your scars, they remind me of all that you've been through, but you're still here smiling." And he wanted to write about her because he took inspiration from how she'd even had a like rougher road than he had, but had managed to still have optimism and hopes for the future. So I'm getting really heavy here. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all good. That's what we're here for. That's what we like. We're a lyric guy. Are you more of a lyric guy or
I'm a real lyric guy, and I've got friends who are not at all.
Mhm.
Like, I'll be into a song and we'll both be into a record, and I'll be like, what is, like my friend CJ, I'm like, what does he say? What is he saying there? And he's like, I don't know. He could care less, It's, and I've always got to know, and I you know, whenever I'm about to interview an artist, one of my first questions to the publicist before, like days before, is, do you have the lyrics? Please send me the lyrics. And there was a time when artists were a little more reluctant to share them, but I find especially younger artists, for the most part, they will. And now with Genius posting pretty much lyrics to everything, you know, you can always, or I often go to Genius to check on lyrics.
Yeah, and
But
that's
if they're not,
now you can just go on your phone and get all the lyrics. Like back in the day, you'd be like, what are they saying? And then you hope you knew.
Exactly.
But now it's like on your phone instantly, you get all the lyrics. And yeah, I think you're right with all the stigmas about, you know, mental health and things like that. And people are just, you know, just telling what these songs are about. And most people, it seems like, are writing their own songs. You know, like these kids in bedrooms aren't having some, you know, Swedish duo write these songs like in the, you know, the late 90s or anything like that. So it's like, this is what I'm writing about. This is what I know.
yeah, exactly. And that's a cool thing. I like the realness, the organic nature. And, you know, say what you will about the internet, say what you will about social media, but I mean, what the likes of SoundCloud has done in enabling kids with nothing more than a laptop to, you know, actually get their music heard by, you know, in some cases it'll catch fire in one way or another. The right person will hear it. And, you know, it's good. It's an encouraging thing. It means there's a lot more music out there, obviously, to sift through, but you know, it is what it
This
is.
song, you can tell that not only is it catchy and popular, easily, I could see it being licensed everywhere. And then also you can tell that he has this background in listening to either emo rock or angst, as you say, or whatever, because there is that hook feeling of not rock, but like, you know, going back to the 90s style of music, where you don't see that a lot with hip hop, at least
Right.
other songs that you have on your list. So
It's true. Yeah. And, you know, we bonded over some favorite songs. I'm not going to say one of them because it's our last song on the playlist today, on the mixtape today. But that, when I heard that Curtis was into that particular song, I was like, you're my boy. Because that song, well, we'll talk more about it. But, you know, for a 20-year-old to even know a particular song and it is a big song,
right.
but song from 25 years ago is something. And then also to really connect with it. Another one you cited was I Miss You, the Blink-182 song, I Miss You,
Yeah.
which is, that song is just like fucking that. Oh, can I say that? Can I?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. You know, that song that's another one that rips my heart out. And, you know, when I tell certain friends, some of like my brainier more indie friends, that I love songs like that, which there was a time when I wanted to front and be all like, oh, that emo, you know, I have no use for that because it was juvenile, whatever. It's weird. Now I've reached a point in life where I just don't give a fuck whether people think it's cool or not.
Right.
You know, and I just don't. And like, so I freely admit how much I love a lot of the music of that era. And you know what? People like the kid on my T-shirt, may he rest in peace, Little Peep. They discovered the you know, the joys of emo rock too, and incorporated into what they did. So
we did a recent podcast where we made each other mixes from 1999, and Blink-182 comes up a lot for us too, because at the time they came out, I was like you, where I was like, like I can't admit to liking this stuff. But now I've embraced the fact that bands like that were a part of our, you know, are part of our life, and that we do like those songs. And for this guy, with Curtis, you can tell that he was influenced by that and by the Pumpkins, which are also, for me, one of the greatest bands of all time, but we'll get into that later. So I kind of like that. It's funny that I didn't even know that background about him, and this was a song that resonated with me. And you can tell that he listened to that kind of style of writing a song, having lyrics, and having a hook all at once.
Sure. Yeah.
So John, we'll keep your fun-loving mix going with the next song entitled PTSD by G Herbo featuring Juice WRLD, Chance the Rapper, and Lil Uzi Vert, Chicago guy.
All Chicago guys, yeah.
3 out of 4 Chicago.
Yeah.
DA got that dope. I turn the news on and I smell death in the air. I prove you wrong, I made it out of here. Don't be long, I see my past everywhere. Something too close to me, eternal PTSD. I got a war zone inside of my head. I made it on my own, they said I'd be in jail again. I see my brothers fall over and over again. Something too close to me, I got PTSD.
Yeah.
What's wild about this is just, I mean, back when you know, hip hop was first coming out, or, you know, like Biggie and Tupac and things like that, it's like, to think that somebody would be rapping about having mental illness, like in the past, it would have been such a, like, a weak look or something. And this is just like, why not talk about this?
And the melodic nature of where hip hop is at these days too. You know, I mean, back in the day, the real, you know, the bar spitters, you know, and look, I'm a huge admirer of the quote unquote golden age of hip hop, you know, but the introduction of melodics into in half sung, half rap songs in the last 6 to 8 years, I love it. I love it. And man, I don't even know where to begin with this song because, well, I love it so much. Juice, I never got to interview him, which I'm sad about because he was not only do I think he was really like a special talent, but because he did make very emotional hip hop and kind of hard on your sleeve melodic music. I think a lot of people didn't really realize that he was a real, I mean, that guy could really freestyle too. I mean, the hardcore fans know that he had that talent. Obviously there's 4 great artists on this track. As you've said, 3 out of 4 of them Chicagoans. And I chose this because he had a song called Righteous that I almost put on instead of this that came out earlier this year. He's had a lot of posthumous singles come out since he died, which is coming up in a year. It was December of last year. And I remember I got a call that morning from my editor at Billboard asking me if I would write something. And I was like, you know, when you hear that news and then you're asked to write something immediately, it's like, and I was barely awake, and it's like, and he wanted it in like an hour. It's tough. And I'd done the same thing for Little Peep 2 years earlier. And, you know, when he says, I've seen my brothers fall over and over again, you know, that can mean a lot of things. Whether that's to violence, whether it's to drugs, whether it's to whatnot. But, you know, we had seen in quite almost yearly succession, Little Peep's death, XXXTentacion's death, and then Juice and in Juice's case, it was just so, I mean, you guys know how it happened, right? It was at Midway Airport, right?
Yep.
And I don't know, it's just, but, you know, like it's a cliche, but there's still the music, and apparently there was a lot of unreleased music. And then also just, I mean, in the larger sense, if there's ever a year in which a song called PTSD was at home, it's this year. So, but yeah, I don't know. And then, yeah, I don't know. I guess that's all I have to say about it. You know, rest in peace, Juice, and all those guys. You know, it's the death of anyone is tragic, but when it happens, you know, Juice had a song called Legends that came out like a year before he died on his last album. And in his last tour, and it was about people who died young. And in his last tour, he had behind him a video loop playing of Amy Winehouse and Kurt Cobain and Tupac and Biggie and on and on and on. And I think he had just added Nipsey Hussle actually to it when I saw him, because Nipsey had just died a month or 2 before the show I saw anyway. And it really brought it all home to you. And there's a line in the song about 27 Club. We ain't even making it to 21. And that was a direct reference to Peep, who had literally just turned 21. I saw Peep the night he turned 21. I know this episode is really dark. It's probably your darkest podcast ever. But like I saw his last New York show, and it was like his birthday was November 1st, and it was on Halloween of 2017. And so he was there on stage as he turned 21. 2 weeks later, he was dead in Tucson, Arizona. And it's just, and then I went to his memorial out on Long Island, and talking about this shit, it's kind of hard because these are kids who just, and then XXX, it was a different situation. He was killed in Florida. But he was 20 or 21 at the time too. So
yeah, you talk about the 27 Club. That's something that, that also, I don't know if you could see in the background, but that's Jeff Buckley tribute stuff.
oh wow.
That I had from when we did we did the Jeff Buckley thing here in Chicago for people like that, and you covered that as well. And so
Yeah. I only saw Jeff once actually, but it was I'll always remember it. He's another a very special person.
Well, let's keep with the angst theme here.
Yeah, we're gonna start to get a little more upbeat here. We've got "Welcome to the Black Parade" from My Chemical Romance. We'll play a little bit and then we'll chat it up.
Did you see my note? Can we So I just wanted to, before we play it, I just want to set it up by saying that it's one of my favorite songs of all time, but also one of the reasons I wanted you to just play the first note of it, which people will hear in a second, is because recently, of all people, Andrew Lloyd Webber responded to a tweet from a random fan of MCR who said, "I can't believe there hasn't been a goth stage musical made based on the Black Parade album," right? And somehow Andrew Lloyd Webber saw this. And so he shot a TikTok where he goes, "Hello, everyone. I'm sure that Broadway musical fans know this." And he plays the arpeggio from Phantom of the Opera. And he goes, "But for you other kinds of music fans, I bet you know what song it is when I just play and you just hit a G note." And I watched that and I'm like, if all I heard was that note, I damn sure would think of that song. And I know that a lot of certain genre music fans would definitely know it. Anyway, you can go ahead.
We're gonna play here in honor of Andrew Lloyd Webber
and Gerard Way.
Right.
When I was a young boy, my father took me into the city to see a marching band. He said, "Son, when you grow up, would you be the savior of the broken, the beaten, and the damned?" He said, "Will you defeat them, your demons, and all the non-believers, the plans that they have made? Because one day I'll leave you a phantom to lead you in the summer to join the Black Parade."
There we go. So yeah, you're clearly a gigantic fan. Is this one of those songs that just gets you pumped up?
100% gets me pumped up and gets me emotional too. I don't even know. God, how do I do justice to this song? This is as far as I'm concerned, the tour de force of the whole what we might call emo rock era. TRL flourished during that time. So, and all respect to Blink and Good Charlotte and Fall Out Boy and Panic at the Disco and all those bands, but MCR were, for me, special because they had not only this tortured quality, but also because of Gerard, a kind of a cartoonish send-up quality to a lot of what they did until they got to the Black Parade, which was this, I remember back in the day, people comparing it to something like Queen would have done, like Bohemian Rhapsody or something. And I know why they sort of said that, but what it touched on, what it revealed, that their magnum opus had to do with being a champion of the underdog, This is hard for me to talk about, guys, because my mom, who died a long time ago, passed away years ago. You know, we came from a comfortable background, but she would always tell me to never, you know, forget that there are people who aren't and who don't. And so, you know, it might sound corny, and like I said earlier, talking about the other song, you know, that's okay. People can think that my love of music, like songs like this, is corny. I will own corniness, you know, but yeah, the idea of being a savior of the broken, the beaten, the damned, that can mean a lot of things, you know, whether that means Bernie Sanders or it means, you know, it means a lot of things in a current context, you know, to me. And and then there's, you know, the way that this song has so many changes in it as well, musical changes in it as well. You know, back toward the end of it, it's like, I won't explain or say I'm sorry, I'm unashamed to show my scars, give a cheer for all the broken people, listen here. It's just, I can't say enough about it. Plus, it's one of my favorite videos of all time. Sam Baird just did, you know, he's an icon of that era. Sam Baird did a ton of Green Day videos, and it's, in a way, I think there's a good parallel between the Black Parade and American Idiot, you know, Green Day's American Idiot, because they were these conceptual records that sort of forced you to see this band that you thought was kind of maybe a little bit of a knuckleheaded punk, you know, emo punk band in the case of MCR, in a new light, you know. And then, as I said earlier when we started, you know, MCR kind of went away. They put out a couple more albums after that. And then around 2012 or 13, I believe it was, or 14, Gerard decided he felt like he'd said his piece with this band, and that he wanted to, and he's an incredibly talented illustrator and
Comic books, right?
done some graphic novels and stuff. And kind of, and he that was it for the band until very recently. Just last year, you know, they did a reunion show in LA that's, I mean, the tickets were not cheap, and it sold out in a heartbeat. And then they were all set to do a reunion tour this year, and then COVID happened. So it's all been pushed back. But they are going to be doing supposedly doing the reunion tour starting in June of next year. And I can't wait to see them again.
Where is your favorite place to see a band in New York?
I guess it's changed a little bit. I mean, for convenience sake, I really like Music Hall of Williamsburg. I don't like places that are too big.
Mm-hmm.
Brooklyn Steel opened a few years ago, and to a lot of excitement because it's a bigger venue, and it's in Brooklyn, and people didn't have to go into the city to go to it. I don't love it. For me, it's a little bit of a barn, but I do like smaller places. I like Elsewhere a lot. Do you guys know no? Okay.
I know some of the places there,
Yeah.
but nothing really in Brooklyn. I know more of the stuff in the city from back in the day.
So Elsewhere is great. Baby's All Right, which is in Williamsburg, is super fun. So those are some of them. And then the standbys like Bowery Ballroom and, you know, Webster Hall actually closed for a complete renovation. They were bought out by BSE, Brooklyn Sports Entertainment, which runs Barclays Center and everything. But they closed, and I covered the last week of shows at Webster Hall, which is just, you know, an iconic venue here.
Yeah.
And for Billboard, it was a few years ago, and the last week of shows was super fun. Tyler, the Creator, played a show, and Good Charlotte, those dudes, I hadn't seen them in a long time. They played one of the it was like every night there was a different Skrillex. So they had like a different genre, you know, every night. That was super fun. That was super fun to do.
So the last time back before I was a comedian, I was a musician, and we got to, the bands that I managed and played with, we got to play at CBGB's the week, like almost a year before it shut down. What were your thoughts on CBGB's really quick? Did you have like any?
I tended to see, I don't think I ever saw anyone famous there, because I think by the time I got to New York, I mean, it was still open, but it was more like I saw local bands there. I saw a friend of mine's brother had a cool band that I don't think they're together anymore, because that was a long time ago, but so I would just go there. I mean, it was great. I couldn't wait. When I first got to New York, arrived in New York, it was one of the first places I wanted to see. I mean, they were just, I went to NYU, so these places were all places that were iconic for different reasons for me. I had to go see CBGB's. I had to go see the Stonewall Inn. I had to go see, I mean, it was like, I don't know. It's
Janae live at
yeah,
too from the,
yeah, exactly. Um, and a lot of them are obviously no more. I remember the old Knitting Factory was a really cool
Yeah.
venue. And then they opened one in Williamsburg, which is still open, but it just doesn't have quite the charm of the old. Anyway,
Speaking of a time that's lost but not forgotten, we're coming to the last song, which for me was huge. One of my favorite songs and one of my favorite bands of all time. We talk about it on the podcast a lot.
you've already talked about this song a lot.
Oh yeah,
We talk about the
the
band.
band a lot.
The band,
It comes up a lot. One of my favorite things to do is if I'm feeling pretty good at home, I'll watch old. Like I watched the MTV Ultrasound that I think you narrated about the Smashing Pumpkins, and it was kind of their rise to fame or whatever. This video, famously, they lost the it was on top of the car and they drove off, and
Yes.
they had to reshoot the whole
Yeah.
video twice or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, we can talk a lot about it, but like the video too is just like, God, oh my God, what a poetic, beautiful, what Valerie and Jonathan did with that video, like from the opening, the kid rolling in the tire. I mean, I have one of my favorite screenshots is there's a car. You may remember the car they're riding in. You see the back shot of it, and the license. There's a sticker on it on the back of the car that says "Proud parents of a D student."
Oh yeah.
And I don't know. It's just I can't say enough about this. Anyway, go ahead if you want.
Let's start it. We're going to talk about it more when we have break. But this is 1979 by the Smashing Pumpkins. Does it need any more introduction? I know we're going to talk a little bit more. I know there's a part we're going to play out in a little second here, but yeah, I mean, this song for me was when I was playing in band, and to learn that riff in the beginning and learn the hook and all that stuff as a musician, it was life-changing because I learned how to play the guitar on Siamese Dream and these songs. I mean, I shouldn't say I played these songs live for people for years, and Billy Corgan to me is a legend. I feel like one of the greatest of all time. But
So here comes the hook.
Yeah, here's the. So
you had something you had told us about where you actually had talked to Billy Corgan about this song. You sort of told.
I mean, I've only interviewed him a couple times, but the first time I did was with Siamese Dream. I'm sorry, with Melancholy, and which, by the way, Melancholy just celebrated its 25th anniversary 2 weeks ago, I think.
I saw that.
Right? Yeah. And it was high. I don't know why I have such a connection to this song. I guess I sort of do. It's because I have a perpetual connection to a certain adolescent mentality that I don't think I'll ever really let go of. But I told him, like, we don't even care to shake these zipper blues. We don't know just where our bones will rest. I said, like, dude, you can just drop the mic. As far as I'm concerned, that hook is like, you don't even need to do anything else. That you're already, as far as I'm concerned, you're in the fucking pantheon. And he like just laughed, and he's like, I know other people who feel just like you do and who connect to that. And he goes, I came in, and he goes, and I think there's a famous story about how it almost didn't make it on the record. Because they were like, he couldn't finish it or something. And there was some question about whether it fit. But I think that lyric, um, we feel, what is it? We don't even communicate. We don't even care, as restless as we are. We feel the pull in the land of 1,000 guilts. Man, I'm like, it's like, dude, you can't, to me, that's Catcher in the Rye level. That's Basketball Diaries level connection with what it means to be young and like, and feel like, and to live for today. And you know, man, I don't know. I'm rambling here and not really making a lot of sense, but it's that is poetry, that song. And I love a lot of Smashing Pumpkins, but that's
Yeah.
to me, that's Head and Shoulders.
And we talked about it earlier, where bands kind of like keep going, and we kind of briefly touched on the fact that
Oh yeah.
his reorganization skills in trying to bring back the band in different formats. Like, what are your thoughts on the new stuff that he's put out? And
Well, I've enjoyed some of it. They got a new record coming out in like 2 weeks, I think, or 3 weeks, called Sear. And the songs I've heard from that are, I like them. They're more, he's more in a sort of a more of a dancey kind of vibe, like, electronic, definitely a dancier kind of vibe. And Jimmy is back and James C. Harback.
Yeah.
So like Darcy, apparently they've tried and that just hasn't happened.
Not happening.
But I think that the sustaining a band for 25 years, 30 now, the band's been around, I think more than 30.
Yeah.
Obviously it's a challenge, because as your moment wanes, because inevitably it's gonna wane, how you keep the band, keep everyone interested and engaged, especially if it is at its core one person creatively, right? Because at the end of the, as we've seen with that band, it's been Billy and other people over time, and I think bringing the old band back together, that kind of thing is done as much for fans as it is for any real musical need, right, to do that. But I don't know. I mean, sustaining a band for that long, often, there are other examples of bands that are basically continuing on with the band name, but are nothing more than one member left, right?
There's a lot of that. And I think for me, at least, as a Pumpkins fan, watching when James Iha came back, because I know Jimmy came back earlier a few times, but when James came back, and I think they did a show at Webster Hall, I want to say, like when they came back, it was in New York where they performed, and then they came out and just did a song with just James and Billy. And I thought, I was like, wow, this is amazing to me.
I remember when he came back, and I was kind of surprised, because I used to see James when I lived in the East Village. Now I live in Brooklyn, but I used to see him in my Starbucks a lot, and we'd say hi, and we didn't chat much. But I never in a million years would have said, so any desire to get back? He was doing his own thing, and but it's nice when enough water has passed under the bridge that people can get back, can do that, I think they did a big 30th anniversary show in New Jersey, 2 or 3 years ago. And they had Davey Havok and Courtney Love were there. It was a kind of an all-star affair. And I remember wishing I'd been able to be at that. Politically, and I don't mean necessarily blue versus red politically, but just culturally, politically, I have some differences with Billy, but that doesn't matter. You know what I mean? I don't know. I just, he's probably to the right of me. I'm guessing. I haven't interviewed him. I haven't interviewed him in a long time. And I know he's a big wrestling dude.
Yes, he is. Yeah, he owns the National Wrestling Alliance now. So I get to see him in both the music and the wrestling world. Yeah. So
cool.
It's wild. There are friends who wrestle for that company, and they're just like, oh yeah, Billy Corgan is telling us like, and then you're going to throw him through the table and then get the pin. It's just like, okay,
Wow.
sure. Yeah. That is interesting with those, like how you said, just when there's water under the bridge. Cause I love a good music documentary. And I don't know, sometimes when you do see people who are still like, I hate him and I'll never talk to him again, like with certain bandmates, you're just like, still after all these years, like, okay, I guess you got to hand it to you. Like you're holding that grudge until the end.
I remember the first time I met Johnny Marr was at a festival. It was the Virgin, so this is how long ago it was, the Virgin Music Festival at Pimlico in Baltimore, like 2000, I don't know, 9 or 10 or something. And he was there doing a solo gig, solo set. But he like knew, I couldn't believe he knew who I was. Cause I wasn't on air or anything. When the Smiths are like in their heyday, I wasn't like on camera or anything like that, but he came up to me and you know, he was so happy to, I don't think he's really, and also Morrissey is honestly, I have a lot of respect
for you as well politically.
Exactly. Look, I think the less said about,
Yeah.
Right.
you know, there are people, the John Lydons and Morrisseys of the world, I'd rather not.
Yeah. They definitely push the separating the artist from the art narrative. There's certain
oh yeah,
you're like, okay, I'm still gonna dig that song, but oh boy.
They make it a challenge, yeah. Morrissey played a bunch of shows at a Broadway theater a couple years ago, and I just wouldn't. My friend is a huge fan. I am a fan, but he's a huge fan, and he's like, I can't believe you're not going to go to one. I'm like, I'm kind of done with, and not just like I don't. He's just, it's too much. I'm sorry, you know, but like the old saying, everything is political. Kind of, I'm at the point in life where everything is kind of political. You know?
I mean, right now it's just, we might look back, but it's just like everything's political. I'm blown away that like Trump will play these songs where it's like, have you listened to the lyrics of these songs? Yet you play them at your, like, Fortunate Son is like literally about a dude like him. And it's like, you're playing this like song coming out like, hey, look at this song.
Right. And I feel like every time I see a live shot from one of his unmasked, not socially distanced rallies, their tiny dancer is playing in the background. And I'm like, why doesn't Elton have a problem with this? You know, like, I mean, but maybe, I honestly, I don't know where the law is on how much an artist can prohibit that. Do you know? Do you happen to know?
As a lawyer, I should know that, but I think it's, I mean, they could say all they want, but they're just going to violate it and then they have to pay royalties. But they can make a demand to cease and desist all they want. I mean, they shouldn't be playing it, but then again, how do you enforce it if it's already been done? You can get royalties for it, and that's about it. But playing music, they can just demand it all they want. And the fact that it's being done is pretty amazing to the level that it's happening now. You know, you see John Fogerty coming on.
Fogerty, the Stones, everybody. Yeah. I'm going to assume Trump's not a lyric guy. He's more of like your buddy, just a music guy. Like, what was that last lyric? And he's like, I don't know. I just like how it sounds in my brain.
Yeah. They're like, well, this song's called Macho Man. It's probably a good one to do. We don't have to worry about the backstory on this. Yeah.
And I like seeing him dancing around a YMCA. I'm like, bro.
Yeah.
Just Google that lyric where they go, you can hang out with all the boys. What do you think they're talking about?
Yeah. I feel like if you tell him, like, you know, Rob Halper from Judas Priest is gay, right? He came out and he's like, what? I didn't know anything about that. Like, it's just over his head or whatever.
Yeah. I don't know, man.
You brought something up about Morrissey and then some of the stuff we've been talking about. Do you think there's and I've seen your pattern of music as you've talked about what you're listening to now, as opposed to being a retrophobe and not going back. Yeah. Do you have the feeling, we've had someone on the show say before, like there's a certain point where you've heard a song and that's it. Like there's a level, it's like, I love that song, but no more. Like I can't hear it anymore. Do you
like new songs, you mean?
Well, no, like for me, I was a huge Led Zeppelin fan, and you know, there's certain songs that, you know, even Ben Folds, I was a big fan for a while. But then at a certain point, it's like I've heard, like whether the number is 1,242 times, is there a limit where it's like, okay, I don't need to hear Stairway to Heaven anymore? I've heard it enough. Or do you feel like it's some songs are
I mean, I don't, because I don't hear older music very often, because I simply just, I'm so busy keeping up with new releases and things. I really just, I'm rarely in a situation where I hear, like, say, a classic, classic rock station or a classic hip hop station. I don't, I'm not avoiding it, but there's only so many hours in the day, and so I guess the answer is I don't hear things enough regularly, older stuff, that I get sick of them. Like, sometimes I'll be in, I don't know, supermarket or wherever, and they'll have a oldies station on or something, and I'll hear, I don't know, something I'm trying to think of a good
Pearl
example.
Jam, because that's considered oldies now.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, yeah, that's fine. I'll hear like Corduroy. Corduroy is probably my favorite Pearl Jam song, and like I think I did get tired of it in the mid, after a few years of it, but now still when I hear it, I'll get excited to hear it again. Because I just don't hear them that often. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, now it seems like if you're getting sick of a song, it's because you played it multiple times.
Yeah,
because whether it's MTV or the radio, those aren't like tastemakers anymore, where it's you're pretty much programming your own music. Because I don't have a car. I rented a car and it had Sirius satellite radio, and I'm driving and I'm flipping the channels and it's just like the same, 50 songs over and over again.
I have a Sirius desktop radio here, which not a lot of people have. It's Sirius is mainly obviously designed for cars, right? So, and 90% of their music channels are retro in one way or another. Yeah. I mean, you really have to, there's Hip Hop Nation, which is current hip hop. But even they have, from my taste, too much like stuff from like 2, 3, 4 years ago. And that's, I mean, there's obviously, they do their research, right? I mean, there's reasons that they have so much, especially with commuters, especially with people in cars. I think they want to, my sister is a good example. She'll drive around LA and listen to 80s on 8 or 90s on 9 on Sirius. And I'm like, I'll be with her. I'm like, why are we listening to this? I'm like, what do you mean? This is your time. And I'm like, do not say this is the problem. Do not say this is my time. Or I'll be at a show and someone like an older person, meaning older like me, will come over to me, or even younger than me, and go and just nicely introduce, they're polite and everything, but they'll be like, music's just really not, it's not really like what it once was, right? And they'll expect me to like commiserate with them about how music sucks now. And I'm like, no, there's a lot of good music now. Right. You need to make a little bit of an effort. And I understand why. It's not like movies where, if a person is at this point in life where they've got kids and they've got other responsibilities, it's hard to not be aware of movie releases, especially if they're big Hollywood releases, right? It's everywhere, right? But I think with music, you still have to make an effort. Yes, we've got multitude of streaming services. Yes, music videos have, I think, had a renaissance in the last 10 years, but you still got to make a little bit of an effort. And whenever people are like, oh, John, Peter Pan complex, you don't want to, that's why. And I'm like, why are you trying to like come at me for the fact that I like new music? It's like, does that, you know what I mean?
I tell people when they say that to me, I go, a lot of people, it's common they stop searching for new music after high school or college, and that instantly puts it on them. Because it's like, my test is Saturday Night Live. If I don't know the guest host or the musical band, I'm just like, am I like crawling back into my, late 90s bubble or whatever? It's like, no, you got to watch all these new things. And from doing this podcast, I've got songs that I would have never heard before, but people younger, older, whatever, have been like, have you heard this? And it's like, ooh, I have not. And I love hearing a new song. And now what's so great, like I remember back in the day, somebody would wear a shirt on MTV and you'd be like, who is that? What is that band? I guess I want to listen to them if Kurt Cobain's wearing their shirt. And then you'd have to go to the store. Now it's just like, okay, yeah, I like that band too. I can tell why they're, champion.
Remember when Kurt wore that Daniel Johnston
Yep.
alien shirt,
Yep.
you know?
That was it.
That spurred so much interest in Daniel, and who was like such a special artist. May he rest in peace. And like,
Yeah.
That was cool. That things like that. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Or a tweet from somebody who could just be like, "This is such a great song," and then all of a sudden, you know, that could make somebody in their bedroom, like we talked about earlier, who's making music. All of a sudden, now it's just like that's the coolest thing.
The last thing I'll say about this, you know, because it all, I think broadly. Look, if you guys get me started talking about the topic of ageism, well, we can do another 2 hours on that. But one of the ways in which ageism in my life really manifests itself is being a music writer. There are few professions where there is such a sort of age bias, you know, and this assumption that I don't think film writers get this. I don't think once you turn 40 or 50,
sure. Yeah,
40 or 50, people don't say to you, well, you should only be writing about movies being made by 40 and 50-year-olds, right? But I look, I'm a freelancer, so I can write about essentially what I want to write about, and people can try to ask me to do things, and I might do them or might not do them. But when people come to me when editors come to me and ask me to write things, 8 out of 10 are older artists. 9 out of 10 of what I pitch are newer and emerging and younger artists. And a lot of them, to their credit, are down to have me do it. They're like, cool, you know. But there is an idea out there that why should a person of a certain age be writing about a 20-year-old artist? I think that's nonsense. I mean, like, you know, I don't know. It's a very strange.
Like guys like Siskel and Ebert, it's like the talk away. But if they were talking about music, it would be like, what are these two old white guys talking about music for? Yeah,
exactly. Right. Especially, you know. But then when I actually do the interview, when I talk to the artist, they're like, oh, he really does know what I'm doing, and he really gets it. And he's like, and they're like, you know, cool. That was one of the best interviews I've done. I can't tell you how many people say that I'm not, this is not blowing my own horn. I just do the homework, you know. I've had young writers say to me, what's the key to doing, you know, good interviews and stuff? And I'm like, just put in the work. Just don't be lazy about it. And I mean, I see a lot of young writers who are amazing. And then I see a lot who are just phoning it in. And, you know, look, getting work in journalism, especially arts journalism, music journalism, is hard enough. You know, you can't half-ass it, you know. I mean, if you want to do it, but be serious about it. Anyway, I don't want to.
Sometimes we'll have to do like morning radio or morning, you know, shows in like a small town. We're doing comedy shows.
Yeah.
And they clearly just read like a little bio, and they're just like, so, and it's like, let me guess, we're just going to talk about these 3 sentences you read off a website before I came on. So yeah, if you're an artist, of course you want the good questions, and I'm sure you notice when they're like, oh, okay, you know where I'm from and you know my influences and stuff. Like, oh, okay, we can have this deeper conversation than just like, you know, I remember I think it's like in Wayne's World 2 when they're talking to the guy, the DJ, and as they're talking, he's just going, and they're like, you're not paying attention to us at all. And he's like, It's like there are interviews like that still to this day.
Of course. An interview, the best interviews are conversations. You can't be thinking about the next question when someone's answering your last question. You know, it's going to be obvious to them that you're not listening. And whether someone is prepared or not becomes very quickly apparent to the artist. And you know, sometimes people ask me, and I'm not going to just, I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to answer the question, but they'll be like, who's the worst person? Who's the biggest asshole you've ever interviewed? And there were a few people that I gave them 2 or 3 chances, and they were kind of jerks each time. So they have been cemented in my head as being not anyone I ever need to talk to again. But by and large, I mean, you can count those people on 2 hands. Most people are. Also, it's not in their interest to be a dick because they're promoting something usually when you get a chance to talk to them, you know?
Yeah. Back in the day, you kind of got points for being a dick. You were like mysterious or like brooding.
Yeah.
It's kind of
like, or that was punk rock to be like, you know, but I used to, okay, here's an example. Because I can say this because because they evolved. I used to dread in the early 90s and I've interviewed him interviewed him over the years, like 4 or 5 times. Every time I'd have to talk to the Beastie Boys because I knew they were going to try and fuck with me. And like, they were just, that was their shtick, and like to make it difficult. And early on, I didn't have a tough enough skin, and now I'd be like, whatever, guys, but I don't know if I would ever really encounter anyone now, especially as a freelancer, that was going to be like that. But my point with the Beasties is that over time they just became adults, and especially once Yalk sort of like became a more conscious human being, and when he embraced the Tibetan cause and everything, and that was, you could just see a change. You could just see it change. They, these guys who once had a like inflatable dick on stage back in the 80s, and they had a designated, and I'm not kidding, they called him the trim coordinator, who would go out in the crowd and collect the ladies.
Fast forward with the VMAs, they gave the speech about like you can't disrespect women and stuff. And
right. No, that's my point. And who's Ad Rock married to now? Kathleen Hanna, right? One of the great feminists of our time. So like, that's my point. We evolve, and we should be allowed to evolve. And I don't have any burning desire to talk to Eminem again, but you know what? Maybe if I had a chance to again, it would not go as horribly as it did the first couple of times I talked to him. But who knows? I don't know.
Well, there's a reason why you're still doing what you're doing, and I always say good stuff rises to the top. You obviously, the fact that you were able to provide all these insight on these young artists. Yeah. I can only imagine what it's like for them to have someone of your caliber to know and understand their music. So,
I mean, man, sometimes they don't even, because if they're under 25 or 3, they never saw me on there at MTV. But like, I went to see Lil Xan. That kid, he's I went to see him a couple of years ago, and he was like 18. And they publicists wanted to take me backstage to meet him afterwards. And I wasn't like, I don't care. I don't want him to know who I am. That doesn't interest me. I just want to say hi. But his security, his manager, his road manager, his tour manager, they saw me and they were like, who that is? And then it was like a big deal for him. But I don't want it to be a big deal. I'm just a guy who likes music, who wants to write about music, and I'll take a cubicle next to any 22-year-old. That's all I'm saying, But people don't want to let you do that. They won't let you do that. Anyway, I've vented enough about ageism.
Yeah,
I get it.
Thank you so much.
We're older comics too, so we get it.
And then, John, before we let you go, is there anything that you want to promote, have the people check out, or any bands too that you are sort of championing lately?
Oh gosh, let me think about this. Who am I really digging these days? Well, look, I'm going to show you. This is a packet of stickers. This is how like 14 years old I am. A packet of stickers from Brockhampton, and Brockhampton they're not new. They've been around for 5 years, but they are this hip hop pop collective from LA led by Kevin Abstract, who's just, I mean, they are, to me, they embody what music ought to be about. They're, 12, I think, is the current lineup. Dudes to like work collectively. Everybody sort of like does a bit of the work. There's a real communal mentality to the way they operate. And again, not brand new artists, but just every time I've seen them live like 4 times, and it's just always it's a hardening experience to see artists work like that. I don't know. I'm trying to think of other artists I can recommend. I mean, I encourage people
to find out more about your latest stuff. What's the go-to for you to find?
Well, they can go to my Billboard page, billboard.com, John Norris is / John Norris, or my Muck Rack, which has got other articles. And under that, it's Johnny No No, which is my Twitter handle. So if people want to check out I've just warned them though, on Twitter, I'm super like political and like, I don't really, so. If
I think everyone is right now.
Yeah, that is to be without saying.
90% of Twitter right now is political, so you're fine.
right. I mean, okay, just a warning about that. And I also talk about soccer a lot. That's, yeah, God, I wish I could think of more names for you off the top of my head, but yeah, I don't know.
Well, come back on if you ever
Yeah.
want. We'd
Yeah, I'd
love
love
you to come back on and give us a 5 new songs. So when you have another theme.
And
Yeah.
in honor of the Backstreet Boys and Neutral Milk Hotel, we'll end with this song right here.
Oh, okay.
Who knows? Who knows what would have happened had you played these for the boys back in the day?
They would have had their own white album.
Can you
All right, John,
imagine?
thanks again so much for doing the show.
Thank you guys. Thanks so much.
John Norris.
Say
Thank you all
say
for
hi to Chicago.
listening to a new episode of Make Us a Mixtape.
Take care.
Thanks, John.
Thanks. Have a good one.